I will do that right now. Retweet. There we are. Right, we should be live on both. Hello, everyone. We'll be starting. Oh, mine's not quite loud today. We'll be starting in just a second. Lots to talk about this week. See, first question: what happened to your Surface Buds? We'll talk about it on the podcast. They're right here. But we'll talk about one.
You swallowed them.
Yeah.
I thought they were Mentos.
Right, pull up the voice recorder quickly. Oh, there it is. Yeah, testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. My mic is really sensitive today.
Is it emo?
Yeah, emotionally unstable. Right, I'm ready to go when you are.
All right. Yes, I'm now recording.
I am now recording as well.
In 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 180 for May 22nd, 2020. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. And we got a lot to get through this week. Some of it will be really exciting. Some of it will be less exciting. Well, it's build. And build is very developer focused. I know a lot of developers are probably listening to us. They're like, but that's my jam. But then there's Zach and I who are like, we're not developers and we don't understand what's going on. But Zach actually has a better idea of what's going on. So he's going to explain what exactly happened this week, including Project Reunion, which was actually one of the most interesting things. And it has a cool name. I actually I like Project Reunion because it sounds cool, but it's a functional, pragmatic name. Like it actually is what it is. But we'll explain what that means, what it means for UWP and Win32 and all that kind of stuff. And then Zach's going to talk about Windows Package Manager, which I barely understand that. So I'm going to learn something. And then there's the Sublinux system for Windows version 2, the sequel, Electric Boogaloo version. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I did some reviews this week. I'm trying to get through them all. I actually had 2 reviews, headphone related. One was the Razer Opus, which if you've been listening to the last few podcasts, I've been hinting at them. I keep reaching for them. I couldn't talk about them because they're under NDA, but they're these guys right here. And these are really, really nice headphones. I'll explain why. And I'll briefly compare them to Surface headphones too, which one's better and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the review went up for Surface earbuds. So if you haven't read that, that's up on Windows Central now. And we'll talk about why I gave it the score I did, despite the fact I actually like them a lot. And Zach will explain why he's not wearing his today. It's actually it's a pretty boring answer, but still, I'm sure we knew people were going to ask about it. And then, of course, just some Windows 10X news, Microsoft Edge news that was also announced at Build. So this is getting actually a little more exciting because there were some really nice developments around Edge and Microsoft 365. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about HoloLens 2, which also had some news this week. Whew. Pretty exciting stuff. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I'm not too bad. It's been a very busy week, I think. Microsoft Build obviously was a virtual event this year, and it felt like it went on forever because it was non-stop, constant. The live stream was basically 48 hours, although a lot of it was repeats after the first however many hours. Lots of sessions to watch as well, which is always fun. But yeah, it's felt constant, which it's kind of how it feels when you're actually at Build, right? Whenever you're at Build, it's every day is like you're up early, you're doing this, you're meeting this person, you're going to see this session, you're talking to this person, you're writing this embargo up. And it was the same basically, but just this week, but virtually, which I thought was very authentic of Microsoft.
Yeah, it took me 4 hours into it and I hadn't watched anything yet. And I forgot to just go through and sign up for the sessions and stuff. And so I'd missed a bunch of things. But it was just you know how people have this idea of work from home and it's easy to just slag off and not do anything. That's kind of what I did at Build. It's just I should actually pay attention to this stuff. But eventually I kind of caught up to it. And I was definitely tuned out compared to previous builds where I was actually physically there. It's kind of hard to ignore. But also this year, was way more developer focused and that's been just a progression. We've always talked about this, how Microsoft Ignite actually kind of became a little bit more interesting. But still, there's actually a lot of big news there. So before we get into it, I just want to talk about this week, my computer. Whew. So I'm using the Omen. If you want to know what desktop I use, it's a review unit that I've never actually properly reviewed because I've been too busy. And I really want to, but that's why I'm going to kind of just shout it out there. It's the HP Omen Obelisk, which is their high-end gaming PC. And it's a prefab system, and I know a lot of people like to build their own, and that's cool. But this is actually a system that's they put together, but it's also meant to be user upgradable. And it's like that. It's like the cyber power PCs and all this kind of stuff where it gets kind of the best of both worlds. You could just configure it, they send it to you, but then you can later just open up the plexiglass door and easily just plug and play and update whatever you want in there, and change the power supply, add RAM and all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm using the Core i9 version with the 2080 Ti, which is pretty awesome. So there's a reason why, that's why I sent back the NV, the 32-inch, because this thing is just way more powerful, and I got this Razer display. But the point of this story was I had a really busy day. I think it was Wednesday night, and I had finished up a review, and I was doing all this other stuff, and I was kind of closing everything down. I put the computer until I locked it down, but it was still on, and I was doing something, probably playing with one of my watches, and then the computer rebooted. I was like, okay, that's weird. Maybe it's installing an update. And then it started booting, and I got the green screen of death. And if you don't know, the green screen of death is very much like the blue screen. It's just for insider build. So I think I was on release preview or slow ring. I forgot which one. And then it's like, that's not cool. And then it just rebooted again. And it would keep doing that until eventually it went into its recovery mode, which is another blue screen. It's like, oh, sorry, Windows is busted. You can do these options. And I was like, well, I guess I'll try to uninstall the last quality update because maybe that was it. And it's like, all right, we'll do that. And then it's like, sorry, can't do that. And I was like, well, that's not fun. And so it just, so the whole thing got kind of ruined. I did reinstall locally, save all my files, but I reinstalled Windows on top of it. And that works. And it did keep all my stuff, but now I have a few little weird quirks that are bothering me, so I'm going to wipe it again. But that was that's the first time that's really happened on all my computers. I run all the insider builds basically, and I've never really had that happen before. They think it's something to do, not even with the insider builds. I was told it may be an issue with HP devices in general. They've seen this in some HP computers, so they're trying to investigate, but yeah, I didn't really need that for the rest of the week. Now I got to wipe the computer again and redo it all. So welcome to my world. This is all I do. Luckily, with the cloud and so much in the cloud these days, it's not that bad. If you have an Ethernet connection to download stuff, it's actually, I don't really lose anything, right? So, but that's my story. So other than that, let's talk about build. Zach, what happened this week? What do I need to know? What's this first story?
So let's start with Project Reunion, because this is obviously I think the biggest news coming out of Build this year, which is funny because it's technically not new news. Microsoft has been doing this for some time already, and we'll get into some of the components that are already there today. But Project Reunion is, I guess, the code name / official name. They've not really been clear regarding combining app development processes for both Win32 and UWP. In the past, it's been very distinct, very clear-cut. You're building either a UWP app or a Win32 app, and never the two shall meet. But over the last couple of years, the wall between them has sort of been breaking down bit by bit. We sort of started seeing this with WinUI, where Microsoft decoupled the sort of UWP design language from Windows and made it available to all apps. So Win32 apps can sort of update using XAML islands and stuff, using UWP elements and stuff. But with WinUI 3, Microsoft is making the entire design, sort of UWP design element available to Win32 as well. And so the idea that Project Reunion does is it unifies app development across the billion Windows 10 devices for all your current and future apps. So if I'm building a Win32 app, I can take advantage of UWP APIs, or if I'm building a UWP app, I can take advantage of the Windows APIs. The Windows API is the Win32 stuff. The UWP APIs are obviously the modern APIs unique to Windows 10. It's essentially just combining all of the libraries and APIs together under Project Reunion so that when you build an app or even update an existing app, you can take advantage of all the new stuff happening. All of the APIs you take advantage of can be compiled into your app so that it works on all different versions of Windows 10. In the past, if you were to try and take advantage of, say, some of the new Fluent Design stuff, you'd have to target at least version 1709 or 1803, for example. But with Project Reunion and WinUI 3, you can just compile all the new stuff into your app so it works on any version of Windows 10, which is kind of nice as well. This is obviously a very simplified version of what Project Reunion is. If you're a developer, I do suggest you go and read up more on the Microsoft Docs website to find out everything. Microsoft is listing 2 things that are part of Project Reunion as of today: WinUI 3 Preview 1 and WebView 2. And over time, more and more parts of the app development process will become part of Project Reunion. And I think the end goal is just to have Windows apps. We've heard Microsoft say this before. Kevin Gallo, lots of people in the sort of developer sphere at Microsoft have been pushing this idea of it's not a UWP app, it's not a Win32 app. They're just Windows apps. Whether it's a PWA or not as well, they all count as Windows apps. If they're talking to Windows 10 APIs, they're Windows apps. And that's kind of what Project Reunion does. It's a formalization of some of the work Microsoft has already started doing with breaking down the barrier between Win32 and UWP. Now, I've seen a lot of people asking, does this mean one of them is dead or the other is dead? No, you're still going to be building either a Win32 or UWP app. There are still benefits to doing one or the other. But for the most part, the feature set should be shareable across both. So no, UWP isn't dead. I know a lot of people are like, oh, this is the the final nail in the coffin for UWP. That's not what that means, and it's also not the death of Win32 either. We're still going to have UWP apps which run best on Windows 10X. We're still going to have Win32 programs that are way more open and can do more stuff, but are containerized to Windows 10X. That's sticking around. There is that kind of thing isn't going away. Just what both apps can do is going to be sort of split between them now. It's going to become less divided and more united, as Project Reunion, the name suggests. So that's a very basic rundown of what Project Reunion is. This is big news for developers. Consumers probably won't care too much about this because it doesn't matter to consumers, of course. This is just for the people who are interested in how apps are developed and are developing apps for Windows. And it's for people who build native Windows apps, of course, because the other thing that Microsoft is pushing right now is PWAs, which we'll talk about a little bit later. PWAs is sort of like the other thing Microsoft is really invested in that doesn't strictly tie into the Windows app development process specifically. There are parts that you can do to web apps that take advantage of Windows 10 features, such as the shared target UI and stuff. But for the most part, the Project Reunion stuff is specific to native Windows apps, which is Win32 UWP stuff. So that's basically Project Reunion in very simple terms.
No, it's good stuff. I mean, so yeah, saying UWP is like the nail in the coffin. Like, that's so weird because UWP is still the primary app design system for Windows 10X devices, HoloLens, and Surface Hub. Basically, anything that is new and cutting edge in the future of sort of hardware that Microsoft is pushing is still UWP. In fact, Kevin Gallo did even state during one of the sessions, if he had to build an app today, what would he choose? He says UWP because that's the one that's more forward leaning.
Yeah.
But yeah, this system is basically just a way to, a simpler way to explain it is for years they were doing UWP, and then Win32 stuff was like kind of put to the side. Microsoft sort of went all in, and that's back when Windows Phone was still a thing, and it kind of made some sense. And then Windows Phone died, and then we saw like Win32 interest kind of come back, and so that was Sentinel and all this. And the last 2 years, you've been sort of seeing a focus on Win32, and I think that was because they were trying to modernize it. That's what you've been seeing, especially with the WinUI type stuff, which is a way to. You don't want to make a Win32 app right now and have it look like an app from 2009, right? So that's sort of the problem with Win32. So Microsoft's been updating that. And now, so it was like this race between these two systems. And now what you can kind of say is they're kind of just evened out. And Microsoft's, all right, they're kind of caught up to each other in their certain respect. I know they're not one-to-one, but going forward, new APIs, new technologies are going to hit both of those sort of at the same time. And this counts for ARM too and everything. So, but I like it. I think it's a really good thing. But yeah, this is, again, Microsoft trying to make a more neutral platform. They don't want to oh, you can only use UWP or you can only use Win32. It's basically use whatever you want to use, and they're all going to offer similar abilities, which I think is pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, Project Reunion, the whole point of it is just to sort of decouple the best of both worlds and allow apps to take advantage of whatever's the best of each platform. Like, for example, the design language of UWP apps is easily the best part of UWP apps. The reason I want all apps to be UWP is because UWP apps are beautiful. But with WinUI, you can now build the exact same UI in your app, but on a Win32 program. And Microsoft, I don't know if it was in the actual build live streams or if it was a session or something, but on Twitter I saw a video of an app that a Microsoft employee had built in both UWP and Win32, but it had the exact same design because it's using WinUI 3. So if nobody told you that it was a Win32 program, you wouldn't be able to tell if it was a Win32 or UWP. And that's the whole idea of it's just a Windows app. You know, it doesn't matter how it's being built, as long as the experience it's delivering is the best it can possibly be on Windows 10. That's all that matters, and that's kind of what Microsoft is pushing for with Project Reunion. So super excited about this. WinUI 3 is in preview, I think now. It won't be ready for like prime time use until later this year, I think, or maybe even early next year. So it's going to be a while before we start seeing developers take advantage of this in shipping apps. But I would love to see Microsoft say, for example, update File Explorer with a brand new facelift using WinUI. That would be entirely possible. You know, it doesn't lose any of its old capabilities because it's still a Win32 program, more or less. It's built into the operating system, but it has a brand new facelift because it's using WinUI 3. Same for things like, say, Spotify or Microsoft Edge or Office or any sort of legacy Win32 program can now be updated using UWP controls and designs, which I think is great. That's the best part of UWP, and Microsoft is decoupling that first so that legacy programs can take advantage of it. This is it.
It's a real important part that UWP has a lot of strengths, which is specifically in the graphics and the design abilities, the resizing and scalability of the apps. So that's the stuff they're trying to bring over. It's good stuff. Someone's good question. You know, is this another way to make developers into the Microsoft Store or plan to make it for Windows 10? So the Microsoft Store, this is a really important point, is very much deprioritized for Microsoft kind of going forward. It's there. They still recommend it, you know, where they can and for developers to put their apps in there. They are definitely not making that the only option, though, for developers going forward. And I think Zach will talk a little bit more about that next with the app packaging and all this kind of stuff. But as much as, you know, Zach and I both use a store a ton. It's the first thing I do when I get a new laptop. I go install like 5 or 6 apps that I need immediately, including things like NPass and there's, I don't know what other ones are, my Adobe Photoshop elements I have in there. And so that, but I'm kind of exception. We've seen the numbers. Microsoft, you know, has been kind of upfront about the numbers. They're not great. It's a separate discussion as to why. It just hasn't caught on, but it hasn't. And so Microsoft is not this. None of this should be thought of a way to reinvigorate the store. In fact, I would consider it the opposite. Zach, am I wrong on any of that?
No, not really. You're exactly right. And like, if you've noticed with the Microsoft Store app itself, the app itself has sort of been abandoned as well. It gets updates, but I don't know what changes. Very little, if anything, changes with each update.
It's maintenance updates.
Yeah, and pretty much because the Microsoft Store, like, it doesn't even have the new Fluent design icon yet. I tweeted this earlier this week, but most of the Windows 10 apps do. Anything that can be self-updated more or less has it at this point, bar a few apps. And the Microsoft Store is one that doesn't. And I think it's because there's no team really maintaining that app. I think whoever's in charge of the Microsoft Store app is actually in charge of a bunch of other stuff and just happens to be in charge of the Microsoft Store app as well. There isn't a dedicated Microsoft Store app team anymore. I think Xbox is in charge of most of the content side, but obviously Xbox is more invested in the game side rather than the app side. So that's why we're seeing, like, Microsoft isn't pushing it too much in any way, because nobody really owns the app no more. Nobody owns that app or the content within it apart from Xbox, which is more invested in the gaming side of it. But this is kind of where the Windows Package Manager sort of comes in. Now, I'm not saying Windows Package Manager replaces the Microsoft Store. In fact, Microsoft isn't saying that either. They outright state in their blog post, what's happening to the store? And they say, this means nothing for the Windows Store. And that's correct. That is 1,000% correct. But that doesn't mean this couldn't change in the future. So let's talk about the package manager real quick, what it is and how it's important for developers, because it really is a developer tool. Essentially, it allows you to create scripts and install multiple programs and tools at once. Developers have often found themselves in an annoying position when they set up a new PC for the first time, clean version of Windows, nothing installed, and now they've got to go and download Visual Studio, all of these other tools that they need to build their apps, all of these, creation software tools to build, art or whatever, and it takes a while. Like, it can take 4 to 6 hours to get a PC fully set up and ready to go with your work environment. With the Windows Package Manager, you can create a script using winget install, then the package name, make that script install all of those programs at once, and you're good to go. So it's kind of like there's a very popular third party. So I think it's Nanite or something, which is essentially like a GUI version of this, where you could select a bunch of different programs, press on install, and what it would do is it would automatically install all those programs for you. Windows Package Manager is it's a first party version of that, but based in the command line. So you can use it in Windows Terminal, for example, or command prompt or whatever. You type in winget install package name and you're good to go. And the good thing about this is that the repo that it's pulling these apps from is an open source repository. So I believe anybody can sort of submit their apps, and I think it uses like smart screen and stuff to make sure the apps are safe. Obviously, there's going to be some, you have to be a little bit more careful here. It's not as vetted as the Microsoft Store is, for example. But yeah, normal users aren't going to be using this anyway, because like I said, it is a command line based installer. So you do have to type in the commands and stuff in CMD. There isn't a GUI for it. But that's not to say there couldn't be a GUI in the future. The repo right now has way more apps in it. Oh, I say way more. It has like way more popular apps in it than the Microsoft Store does. For example, it has Steam in it. I've seen Google Chrome. It has these apps that people have been asking the Microsoft Store to have forever. And it hasn't. But on day one, the Windows Package Manager does have that. So in the future, could we possibly see, say, the Microsoft Store app updated to include this Windows Package Manager repository as well, so that we do see Steam in the Microsoft Store? And when you press Git on the Steam link, it just pulls from the open source repository rather than the Microsoft Store repository. But if you're downloading a Microsoft Store app, of course, it will still pull from there. So that's basically the Windows Package Manager in a nutshell. People are shouting at me saying my audio is going up and down. I have no idea why that would be the case. I'm going to try and fix that whilst Dan talks.
I'm just reading something on Twitter. Someone on a MacBook running Spotify, it's using 222 gigabytes of RAM.
Spotify sucks as a desktop app, I'm just saying.
But 225 gigabytes, like,
yeah,
how's that possible? But yes, that's Spotify's issues. I don't really have much to say on the packaging stuff, unfortunately. That's sort of above my pay grade. But it is all interesting for developers to have these options out there. I think that's really what's coming down to. Different ways of getting apps to people, and also for IT departments who want to mass distribute that way. What do you have to say about WSL2, including what that actually stands for?
So the WSL2 news is, I could actually see it. It's automatically going up and down, and I don't know why it's doing that. Sorry. Let me see if I can fix that real quick. I'm trying my best to make sure it doesn't happen. Right, no, you stay there. Testing. Nope, still doing it. I don't know why it's doing that.
It's not that obviously that setting in Skype.
That's what I'm messing about with. It's not. It doesn't matter. It's still changing automatically here. That's annoying. Can I change it maybe in the legacy control panel? Testing. Yeah, no, it's definitely. I can't stop it. All right. Well, you're going to have to make do. I'll try and sit further back, so maybe it's not as bad.
It has to be something coming after Skype, because you sound fine to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it in just the Windows settings app, and it's going up and down like crazy. We'll have to just make do. Sorry, everyone. All right, we're about 21 minutes in. So the Windows subsystem for Linux 2, obviously that's been around. I think it's part of version 2004, which is just about to launch. Microsoft announced some sort of more updates to it with Build this week. The main ones are adding support for graphics processing, compute workflows, which allows Linux tools to leverage GPUs to enable hardware acceleration for many development scenarios. The biggest one here is support for Linux graphical user interface apps. So, for example, if you're using Windows, the subsystem for Linux, you can now, I say now, I don't know if it's available yet, but it will be, at least you'll be able to do it very soon. You'll be able to boot up an actual Linux GUI app, such as GIMP, for example. I think they used GIMP as the example as well when they were demoing this. But you can now essentially run Linux apps on Windows with a GUI, not just the sort of command line stuff. So Windows is now the best place for Linux app? Question marks. This is a big deal for developers. I don't think consumers are going to care too much about this because I think Linux is huge in the developer world anyway. So I think what Microsoft is trying to do here is make Windows the best place for Linux stuff in addition to Windows stuff, because there are people who need both. A lot of Windows developers also need Linux to do, server stuff or whatever. What if Windows is the best place for both worlds? They won't need that Linux install anymore, and Microsoft wins. So that's a big one for Windows substitute for Linux. And Microsoft also says it will soon support a simplified install experience by running the command wsl.exe-install, which will make it easier than ever to start using Linux apps on Windows. So if you're a Windows subsystem for Linux user, big changes coming for subsystem for Linux too. And that's basically the quick rundown on that stuff. I'm not a huge Linux user. I did tweet earlier this week asking, why do you use Linux if you do use it? And I got loads and loads and loads and loads of replies from loads of people talking about why they use Linux, sorry. And most of it is development reasons. It's all about servers, and web development and stuff as well. So Linux has its niche. It has its market. It may not be the most popular desktop OS in the world, but, it has its purpose, and that's why Microsoft is going after Linux. I say going after. That's why Microsoft is embracing Linux on Windows with this subsystem.
Oh, yeah. This is 100%. I mean, okay, 99% play for developers. That's all it is. Devs love it. Has nothing to do, they didn't do this for people who want to install Debian into Windows and run Linux instead. You could do that, but, consumers have no interest. But that is, and this is just an ongoing story about with Satya Nadella and the future of Microsoft really building Windows to be its own, the best platform for developers, whether it's using Visual Studio and all the new updates with WinUI and everything, all the tools that are coming out in Linux. Yeah, and that even translates to Surface Book 3, which, my review will come out next week for, but one of the major focuses of that device is you can kind of think of it as being made for developers. It's sort of supposed to be the ideal developing machine. And that's why they've been, the new version, of course, has Quadro graphics, all this now goes to 32 gigs of RAM. That's not made for consumers. That's made because developers asked for it. Scott Hanselman, who, had a big role at Build this year. I mean, he always does. But, he actually worked a little bit with the Surface team for testing all this. But you could think of that hardware as sort of being aimed. So this all ties together with Linux and all that. This is getting back really to the roots of what Microsoft was good at versus sort of the Ballmer era. And I know a lot of people have, fond memories of Ballmer and this push into the consumer market, but they've been really pushing back and making Windows into this really nerdy technical tool that professionals can use for all their tasks. So that is WSL2.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break from the build stuff to talk about the Surface earbuds review that Dan did this week. Then we'll jump right back into it with Windows 10X stuff. So, Dan, take it away.
First of all, why aren't you wearing earbuds today? Everybody's going to ask, so let's just get it. So you're going to explain this one time, and then it's the responsibility of everybody listening to this podcast and in the chat room that when someone asks it in 3 weeks, you have to, you guys have to chime in and tell that person why, because we're not going to keep doing this. But go ahead.
So here's the reason. The earbuds suck. No, it's not the reason. The real reason is Windows is very bad at Bluetooth devices, and at least for me, using XSplit and hosting the podcast, it's fine for people just participating in the podcast like Dan. They can use whatever headset they like. It doesn't matter. But on this end, I need to hear not only the system audio but Dan's audio and my own audio. And the using Bluetooth earbuds of any kind, it's not just the Surface earbuds, it's just Bluetooth devices in general, make that process a lot harder. For example, we talked about it last week, how the earbuds, or any wireless headphones for that matter, you have two options. They have the stereo mode and the sort of microphone mode. I need both of those but you can't do that. It's one or the other with Bluetooth headphones on Windows. So that's why I'm using a wired one, because that sort of alleviates the entire issue. Don't get me wrong. I wish I could use these to do the podcast, and you can technically do it. It's just way more annoying to set up and do. So just to streamline the process, I've decided to just use the wired headphones instead. It's nothing to do with the earbuds specifically. It's just how Windows handles Bluetooth headphones in general, unfortunately.
Got it. So, well, that's that. I'm still wearing the earbuds. So if you want to see, if you guys are watching this live video, you can kind of check them out. So the review went up this week. I spent it was a very long review, very detailed. I think I addressed almost everything in it. So if you really want a deep dive as someone who used them and try to address all the questions. So, they're good. So I have to separate the score I gave them versus the score I think that most people should have. They got UPS here. Hopefully they don't need a signature. I'll be back.
It's Dan's review. There's nothing I can say. This is going to be my audio is still really going up and down. What is happening? I don't know why it's doing it. I can see it. If I do that, it's going to be even louder. Testing. Now it's back to normal. It's just it's going up and down, and usually you just turn it off in Skype, but Skype doesn't seem to care that the setting is off. So there's really nothing I can do about it. Sorry, guys.
I am back.
Welcome
Sorry,
back.
I had a sign for it. It's actually, I think this is under NDA and embargo. I don't even know what it is.
Well, don't say it then.
I know. I can't even say who it's from. It's not Microsoft though, so don't worry. Oh, I think I know what this is. I'm very excited about
Surface Duo. No.
Yeah, right. No, it is. It is sadly not that. Very cool. Very excited about that. Sorry, I can't tell you what it is. You'll hear about it in coming weeks. Where was I? Oh, let me go. All right. So yeah, earbuds, Surface earbuds. I personally really like them, and obviously that's why I'm wearing them. I'm not wearing them just because it's the review or anything like that. Let me keep wearing them for the podcast. I'm the target market for these things, and being as the review units, I obviously didn't drop $200 on them, but that's where my score comes in. So if you have $200, so let's just say you're in the market for earbuds, and even some of our own staff have been going through it because earbuds are just kind of a thing now. I don't know why, for various reasons, but it's a very competitive market, even more competitive than when Microsoft first announced these, which was back in October. You now have the Google Pixel Buds, the Samsung Buds, Galaxy Buds. Then you have Apple AirPods, of course. And there's a lot of other companies that just have various ones out there as well. And so the problem with these is they're priced at $200, but something like the Galaxy Buds, I think, are like around $140. And some people have gotten refurbished ones for like $60 or $70. Even AirPods, I think, are $140. That's probably without the case that charges wirelessly, but still, it's $140. And then the Pixel Buds, I think, are $180. So a little bit more expensive, but it's still all cheaper. And so then the question comes, okay, what makes Surface earbuds worth $200? Now, the good thing about the earbuds is they're definitely different from everything else out there. And that's kind of hard to do, to differentiate yourself, because you could kind of say Galaxy Buds and the Pixel Buds are, all right, they have some pros and cons each, but they're kind of similar. Their strengths are going to definitely be battery life. It's 8 hours per charge. It's probably more like 7 hours. And if you're doing phone calls that whole time, it's a little bit lower still. So it's battery life. It's definitely comfort. been raving for the last 2 weeks about how comfortable they are, and I still will swear by that. You can leave these in for hours and hours and hours. You're not going to get any ear fatigue. I'd also point out that the fact that they don't have any active or passive noise cancellation is a plus. Like, I realize some people want that, but for me, I actually don't. I really enjoy being able to hear those around me. Someone comes up to me, talks to me. If I'm outside running, and yes, you can run with these. They're IPX4, they're sweatproof, but I can hear a car coming up. Like, I actually prefer that. Plus, I don't like jamming earbuds into my ear canal. A lot of people, one, are super sensitive to that, and it's uncomfortable. And two, even after a couple hours of wearing it, it's going to just be that. It's going to be uncomfortable. So these fit like a really unique, I would also almost call them like lifestyle earbuds, because you can put these in the morning and just leave them in all day, take your phone calls and watch video. You can do whatever you want with them. But I don't know if that alone is a selling point for a lot of people. The fact you can leave them in for 7 hours is great. I don't know how many people are going to want to do that. And then there's the Office integration stuff, which, everybody kind of rolled their eyes at when it was first shown. It's like, okay, you can swipe and switch your PowerPoint slides. And that's like probably the least interesting thing about these, right? And I think we all kind of agree. It's like, that seems pretty, not only niche, but maybe gimmicky too. Like, and even the gestures, that's another selling point. And I really like the gestures on here. Zach pointed out in the last podcast, I think it's, you can only do gestures on one side for volume up, volume down, and then the other side is swipe back. And it's not both. And that's confusing. I think they did that because the touch surface is so small, they didn't want you to screw up and do the wrong gesture. But I would also, so I like that. I think it's another unique feature. Most earbuds, you stick them in your ears and that's it. They don't do anything, right? You got to do it all from your phone. But I think this advantage goes away, say if you have an iPhone and an Apple Watch, because the Apple Watch, you can control the volume with the little, the crown. Sorry, I forgot. Mind blank there. You can control volume with the crown. You can skip tracks just on the like. If you have an Apple Watch, like all that is way more intuitive using an Apple Watch. Even with like doing slides, I think would be easier on a little screen on your wrist. So if you don't have a smartwatch, and you want to wear these all day, and you just kind of want to leave them in, and sort of like I said, like lifestyle buds, I think they're great. And for me, that is what I want. But I don't see they either have to come down in price and be like $150, maybe $160, or they need to offer what I refer to as a killer feature. But what is a killer feature in headphones and earbuds, right? That's really hard to define. And it's not my job to define it, but I feel like if they're going to charge $200, it needs to do something way beyond what all the others are doing, and it doesn't. So that's the thing there. And in my scores, I gave it 3 out of 5. We a lot of people focused on that. That's an arbitrary score, admittedly, but go read the review. You could see the points on there. I am disappointed you can't multi-pair, and we figured this out sort of at the end of the podcast last week, although I think it was in the question comment section. So you can't multi-pair, which was the benefit of Surface headphones. But there's an explanation for that, which is you can't have 2 active connections because one of the active connections is between the 2 headphones themselves. They got to communicate wirelessly that's what makes them, right? So that's one active connection. And then the other one's for connecting to your phone or your PC. And that's a bit of a bummer. I would have really, but that's not Microsoft's fault. That's Bluetooth, right? So Microsoft is sort of like a slave to Bluetooth, and they can't do anything more about that if they want these to work across all devices. Microsoft could easily be like, we're going to create a proprietary system or like a special version of Bluetooth. They could do that, but then it would work on like what, and they would sell even fewer of them. So, I feel like they would be so much more useful if I could switch between my phone and PC dynamically, but they can't. And that's not Microsoft's fault, but I wish they could figure that out. But yeah, and I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I like them personally. I think if you're going to go out and spend money, you got to really think about what you want them for. I had one person tell me in comments like, oh, you should try these Cambridge something, they go into the ear canal. They fit perfectly. You don't need active noise canceling because they work so well in your ear canal. And the audio quality is amazing. It's so immersive. And they started throwing around all these audiophile terms, which I'm sorry. I don't like audiophiles. People call themselves audiophiles. They're most annoying people on the internet. But like, if you want to have earbuds and the sole purpose is to listen to audio, you want to get lost in the music, tune the world out, these are definitely not for you, right? And I get it. Sometimes I want to do that. In fact, that's why I would say Surface Headphones 2 is really good at doing. That's not what these are for. So the idea of someone trying to tell me, like, you should get those instead, it's like, that's the exact opposite of what I want, actually. I don't want things that go in my ear canal. But yeah, I think Microsoft, and the audio quality is good. Like, it does get them a seat at the table. And you have a little bit more insight on this. You actually have the Galaxy Buds. So, someone's asking about active noise canceling. How many times I have to state this on the podcast and in the review? These do not have active noise canceling. They don't. I just explained. They don't. There's no active or passive noise canceling, and that's actually a selling point, in my opinion. You can't have active noise canceling without passive. It doesn't work very well. But, Zach, why don't you talk about your experience with the Galaxy Buds compared to these, because you've used both of them.
Sure. So I have the Galaxy Buds Plus here. I did have the original Galaxy Buds before. And side by side, listening to the same track on both the Galaxy Buds Plus and the Surface Earbuds, I do find the Surface Earbuds to have slightly better audio, but it's not by much. If you bought the Galaxy Buds Plus just before the earbuds came out, you haven't wasted your money. And I said this in last week's podcast as well. I do find that the earbuds to be a little bit bassier, but the benefit of the Galaxy Buds Plus is that they seal in your ears because they have that special sort of in-ear design, whereas the Surface earbuds are designed like the AirPods, which sit in the sort of outer part of your ear, rather, of your ear canal. So that's what makes the earbuds more comfortable. If you wear the Galaxy Buds Plus for more than a couple of hours, your ears start to feel quite bruised. You don't get that. That's not a problem with the Surface earbuds. But at the same time, you do get more audio leakage because they don't seal in. You can sort of help this a little bit by using the larger earbud size, because it comes with 3 sizes. By default, it's the medium size. But in the box, you also have a small size and a large size. I use the large size on the earbuds because I think it helps keep audio in just a little bit more. Not by much. It doesn't seal you off from the outside world, but it does improve things a little bit. If I had to pick between the Galaxy Buds Plus or the Surface earbuds, it's a hard one because I like the design and I like the touch gestures on the Surface earbuds. I like the audio on the Surface earbuds a little bit more as well. But at the same time, I like the smaller case and the convenience of wireless charging on the Galaxy Buds Plus. I think the biggest downfall of these for me is the fact that when you set them up, you have to download Samsung's Galaxy Wearables app to set them up and stuff, which is unnecessary. You don't have to do that with the Surface earbuds. You can just pair them and they're good to go. If you want the EQ customizations and stuff, you can just, you don't have to. You can download the Surface audio app, but you don't have to do that. As far as I'm aware, you do have to do that with the Galaxy Buds Plus, unless that's changed. But yeah, overall, I think these are very close contenders. I don't think one is better than the other. I think they're about the same. The AirPods Pro, which I haven't tried, I assume the AirPods Pro are better than both of these. They are more expensive after all, and but obviously, I think the Surface earbuds are more comparable to the normal AirPods because of the design, rather the fact that they don't go in the ear; they just sit on this sort of the entrance to the ear canal. I think, and that's a more comfortable design, but that's what the AirPods do as well. So therefore, I think the AirPods and the earbuds are more comparable than the earbuds and the AirPods Pro are.
It's all very confusing. Yeah, some other complaints. So yeah, the case doesn't have wireless charging, which doesn't bother me personally. But again, at this price point for $200 and this large case, which it feels like it should have that, right? Especially for that price you're paying. The case also, there's no way to know the battery level of the case, which is really weird. Like, so when you use the app, you can see in the app the battery life of each earbuds. In fact, I'm looking at it right now. And they do drain differently. So
yeah, I've seen this complaint a lot.
Yeah, the right now is 84%, the left is 91%. But I think I don't think it's a bug. That's just because the right is going to be serving as the master. It needs to both broadcast and receive from the phone, whereas the other one, the left, just receives. And that's why you're seeing that battery life difference.
Yeah.
I can see the battery level of the earbuds, which is cool. But I can't see the battery level of the case, and you're supposed to get 2 extra charges. And that's a little, I don't know why. Why? Like my Bose SoundSport Freeze, which I use for the gym, have, a wireless case, but it has a little button, and you press it and the little LEDs light up on it. It's just a little meter. Problem solved, right?
Have you tried plugging the case into the PC?
Yeah, nothing happens.
No? Because for some reason the case gets separate updates, but you can only update if you plug into with the cable, which is a weird design choice. But I'm just wondering if maybe the update, because there was an update when I did it, enables the battery percentage.
I'm going to try it right now.
Yeah, using the Surface app. You'll see if you go to the updates page, below at the top it says earbuds are up to date, but below it says charging case update now. If you haven't done it yet, I think you should have an update ready.
I'll check for update. Oh, you know what? The case does have an update.
But this is weird, right? Because the only way to update the case is by plugging it into a Windows PC. You can't update the case using the mobile app because you can't plug it into the phone. It's a weird... That must mean that whatever updates Microsoft are pushing to the case aren't that significant. Because most people aren't going to do this.
Which now begs the question, right? Like, what's new? I don't know. If you want, you guys can pay attention to after my Twitter, or on my Twitter after this podcast, and maybe I'll update it. I don't want to do it now because knowing my luck, it'll probably like nuke my connection, and like I'll have to scramble for headphones. So
Yeah.
I'd rather do that right now. But yeah, so there's those issues. What else? Some people have complained a little bit about a hiss. I've heard this on my Android phone.
Same for me.
There's a background kind of hiss that I thought had to do with the Bluetooth LE. Basically, it was switching to a low energy mode, so lower bit rate to help preserve battery life. Because when you turned on music, it would go away. Some are also saying it has to do with left and right talking to each other, and I don't know. It's a valid concern now. So basically, what happens is if you're using say Android or even an iPhone, and there's no sound playing, it's almost like a background, like kind of hiss going on. It's not terrible, but it's not ideal. So yeah, I don't know. There's can it plug into a phone? I don't know what it is, so I don't know what that means. But and they don't connect up to Xbox. I know everybody asks that. It's a weird request, in my opinion. Xbox requires an Xbox wireless proprietary connection. It's a separate physical chip. It's a licensed technology. That means that Microsoft would need to fit in another piece of hardware into these earbuds to make that happen, which I don't think there's any room to make that. These things are already pretty packed tight, and people would argue they're too big as it is. And then they would have to jack up the price because Microsoft does need to charge itself to use its own license, and all for what? So you can use them with Xbox. I think that'd be an interesting selling point. I don't think it would necessarily help this usage, but maybe, who knows? They can come out with Xbox versions, right? That'd be kind of neat. So I'm not against that. But yeah, go check out the review. I think it's fair. I think for a Gen 1 product, there's a lot here to like, but yeah, I'm curious about seeing Gen 2. And that gets into Surface headphones too, which, I'm going to review soon as well. They're right here, the black ones. So these almost are the opposite story, and that's because they trimmed the price down by $100. Meanwhile, Bose and Sony's are still $350. So now when you compare these to those, these still have also like some huge advantages to them. Now that's a different story. Now the Surface headphones too, I would argue, is even like a better proposition, and actually does, offer something that's definitely unique, especially, and Zach knows this, nothing, and actually Unbox Therapy, Lou did a thing on the Surface headphones this week too, which was pretty funny. The wheels, as he calls them, on the side of the Surface headphones, it's the most ergonomic headphones on the market. They're just so satisfying to use. But I guess that segues, while we're talking about headphones, I'll talk about this just briefly. These are the Razer Opus. So these were actually announced at CES. I got them a month ago, and I've been using them. These are very fancy. They're THX certified. So this is interesting because this is one of the first consumer products by Razer. It's not aimed at the gaming community. This is general lifestyle technology, and they're branching off into. That's why they look just really nice. They actually look like a combo between the Bose and the Sony's. There is a little Razer on the band there, but other than that, it just says THX. So the value here with these are $200, which is pretty cheap. These are both passive noise canceling since they go over the ears, but also active noise canceling. Moreover, it's a hybrid technology. So there's different types of active noise cancellation. There's ones where they put a microphone on the inside as well as a speaker, so it hears what's going on in there and adjusts the audio. There's one where they put a microphone on the outside, and then there's ones with both, where there's a microphone on the outside and the inside, and that's called a hybrid system. And that's what this is. That's more expensive to do, but it gives you a better, more efficient thing because it's both hearing the outside noise, but also what's going on the inside, and it does the active noise canceling for you. They were co-designed with THX. So Razer owns THX, but they didn't get any special treatment from them. Basically, what happens is when they're making these, they worked with THX engineers and had to pass their rigorous tests. And the audio profile on these are really, really nice. THX is a more balanced system, so these aren't like the, like super heavy on bass. There is an EQ. You can't manually adjust the EQ, which is annoying, but there are presets. And that's actually a strength for both Surface headphones and earbuds, is that they do have presets in an EQ, a 5-band EQ, but you can customize and save your EQ, which I really appreciate. And I think is a big selling point. Can't do that yet with the Razers. Maybe you will. 25 hours battery life. Again, 5 hours more than the Bose. And 5 more hours than the Microsoft ones, too. So very long battery life, Type-C charging. Now, when it comes to that noise canceling, though, here's a trade-off. Surface headphones, $50 more, granular control of that noise canceling. You control the dial, and it's like 13 levels, I think it is. And then it goes to an amplification. This is on or off. You either get noise canceling or you don't. So you don't get to control it. There's no fine tuning. There is a button that does, you'll hold it and it amplifies the room. So if someone talks to you, you can hear them. They're very comfortable. Are they more comfortable than Surface headphones and the Sonys and both? I kind of think they are. I just really enjoy the way they felt in my head. They weren't heavy. I'm very sensitive about the apex on the head. And while this isn't the thickest headband, I had no issues with pressure. But I think like the real value here is these are, like I said, they're $200. And when you look at it, $200 for those, $250 for Surface headphones too, and then $350 for the Bose and the Sonys. That's actually a really nice grade. Those prices actually reflect what they are. This gets you in the door for really good noise canceling and THX audio profile, which I think the audio on here sounds really, really good. I really like it. But for $50 more, Surface headphones give you the dials, which are going to give you way more control. There's no gestures on here or anything like that. So I don't think there's gestures. I forgot. But, you get way more controls and you get, they're a little bit bigger. They also rotate more and all this kind of stuff. And then I think the hard sells, the Bose and the Sonys. And I don't think the Bose and Sonys are worth $100 more. And I have both of them. They're great. Don't get me wrong. But I don't feel like they're worth an extra $100 or $150 for them. I just don't. Especially the Bose, the audio profile on the Bose are just not amazing. The Sonys do sound really good. Do they sound $100 or $150 more good? I don't think so. I mean, it doesn't matter that much to me. But then again, Sony's about to apparently come out with the version 4, so who knows? I'm sure they'll be even better. So those are the Razer Opus. Go check out my review for them. Like I said, I really like them. I think, again, for a first time out, Razer is doing good things. So hopefully that's it for headphones. I'll do the Headphone 2 proper review next week. I don't love writing on headphones. It's a tough category to write on.
Yeah,
there you go. And
I think audio quality is subjective, right? Like it depends on the person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I couldn't test these on an airplane, obviously, but I did do. So what they recommended, and I could do, is go down to my basement. I have a Dolby Atmos surround system, and I can play a YouTube channel where the background noise and put them on, and it's really good active noise canceling. I mean, I was impressed with it, but I'm not a lab, so I can't really measure. But I don't know. It's all good stuff. All these companies are doing well, I think. So, what do you think of Sager laptops? I don't know what those are. Those are the gaming laptops. Yeah, I don't touch gaming laptops very often. So they're gross. Okay, I've talked a lot. What's next? Windows 10X. What happened with Windows 10X?
So So we're sort of moving back into the build stuff now. Although this isn't technically build, this is sort of outside build. Microsoft sort of spoke to us before build and sort of gave us a bit of context and background on the current position of Windows 10X and Windows 10. So none of this, what we're about to talk about, was actually talked about in the build live streams, but it is information that Microsoft were willing to share with media, just to sort of give context to Windows 10X and Windows 10 going into 2021. So there's some interesting stuff here. So first of all, Microsoft confirmed that there had been rumors beforehand. Microsoft confirmed to us that yes, some of Windows 10X's features and innovations will be coming to Windows 10 next year, or at some point in the future. I don't think they were very specific on next year or not, but they are working on bringing some of Windows 10X's features to the full version of Windows 10. Now, they weren't willing to talk about which features exactly, but I think it's fair to say we'll probably see things like the containerization of Win32 programs, at least in some instances, not all instances, and things like faster Windows updates. All of that, I would be surprised, I would be shocked if that doesn't come to Windows 10 eventually, because they are saying innovations, and Windows 10X isn't just a pretty face. Under the hood, there's all sorts of new improvements and innovations to Windows as an OS going on, and I think most of the things we'll see come to full Windows 10 are the underlying platform innovations rather than the on-surface features and stuff. We might see things like the improved Action Center show up, but as far as I'm aware, although it's technically possible, I don't think the Windows 10X Start menu is coming to full Windows 10 anytime soon. But yeah, so Microsoft sort of confirmed that yes, we are expecting and planning to bring some Windows 10X things to full Windows 10 in the future. They also sort of confirmed that it won't be ready until next year, Windows 10X itself, that is. It was supposed to be holiday 2020 originally, but then when they decided to delay the dual screen stuff, they didn't really give an update as to when to expect Windows 10X. They've told us, while there isn't a concrete sort of time frame just yet, they're hoping to have Windows 10X ready within the first half of 2021. So that could start shipping in the summer of 2021, I would guess. And that will be on single screen PC. So the dual screen stuff isn't in the picture right now. It's all about the single screen things. I would expect to see it on something like a Surface Go 3 or even low end sort of Chromebook type devices from HP and Dell and stuff. I would be surprised if we see any flagship Windows 10X stuff at launch. I mean, the Surface Go might be the flagship from Microsoft for Windows 10X at launch, but I'm not expecting to see it on the likes of a Surface Pro or Surface laptop. Not at first, anyway. Unless Microsoft...
So I just want to mention something there. So I think you're right in the sense that probably the Surface Go makes most sense to launch as a Windows 10X device. That said, what I think happened, and we've experienced in the past, is OEM partners of Microsoft will take a scattershot approach. Some will try to create another kind of budget device, a Chromebook competitor maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see an HP or a Lenovo kind of create a more high-end version. This is how, like, we saw that with the ARM devices. We saw sort of a, some premium stuff like the NVX2, which I still love and wish HP would update, but we'll probably see all sorts of ranges for that, which would be pretty cool. At least that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. Someone's asking, where does the Surface Neo fit in here? Microsoft weren't willing to comment on things like the Surface Neo. They were talking specifically about the OS. But considering Windows 10X will be ready for single screens by mid next year, dual screens are coming later. So at the very earliest, I think fall 2021, maybe even into 2022. And that raises questions such as, will the Surface Neo hardware be updated between now and then? Because the Surface Neo announced in October 2019 is going to be significantly outdated come 2022. So who knows the status of Surface Neo? There's a lot up in the air with that device. I have a feeling if we do see it launch, it might be updated quite a bit compared to what was announced in October 2019, which is kind of why they didn't really detail what was inside it. I think they said Intel Lakefield, but that was it. We'll have to see where the Lakefield chips are come 2022 or late 2021 even. So
yeah, and what you got to find out, and I'm tasking with, is to find out the status of it in the sense of, are they going to change the design? Right. Are they going back to the drawing table, or are they just literally putting whatever version this is on hold, and they will just revisit it later? Because I can see it going either way. If they're confident in the design and it really can't be improved too much, maybe they won't. But are they going to take you're told you have another year and a half at it? Like, are they going to do something
Yeah.
different.
I mean, if Microsoft sits on the hardware for too long, we're going to be in for another Surface Duo problem, which is
Duo,
the Surface
right.
Duo has been done for like 3 years, but they sat on it because they changed the OS and stuff. If Surface Neo gets delayed any longer than it needs to, then we're going to have a device that launches with last year's specs, with a design from 2 years ago, just like Surface Duo is about to do this year. So Microsoft needs to hurry up with whatever plans it has for dual screens. But yeah, they didn't confirm or anything regarding timeframes for the Surface Neo or dual screen Windows 10X. A couple of people asking, what are the implications of Project Reunion on Windows 10X? A container for Reunion apps? So every app on Windows 10X runs in a container. The difference is some of the containers spin up a legacy version of Windows and some of them don't. The UWP apps, for example, don't spin up a legacy version of Windows to power the legacy app. They just run natively, air quotes, on Windows 10X. A Project Reunion app, I believe, unless it's talking to Win32 APIs, should be fine running in its own container natively. So I don't think it will need to spin up legacy stuff. The only reason it would need to do that is if it's talking to Win32 APIs. So it's the same thing. Like, you know, if it's an app that talks to Win32 stuff, it will have to spin up the legacy container. That's just how it works. If it doesn't need any of that legacy stuff, then it should run natively on Windows 10X. And that's just how the app model works on Windows 10X as a whole. A couple other things is Microsoft, when they were talking to us, they used the term reinvestment in Windows 10 multiple times, which I was quite shocked about. It's them sort of half admitting that, yeah, you're right, we've sort of let Windows sit on the back burner for the last couple of years. You know, we've said it time and time again. The last 6 to 8 months of the Windows Insider program have been very boring. The builds have basically had nothing in them. Under the hood changes, some stuff for developers here and there and enterprises, but nothing groundbreaking. There's no innovation going on in Windows. And there really hasn't been for the last few releases. I think the last biggest change that came to Windows was the light theme, which was 1903. But that was, I can't call that a new feature. That's just an addition to a feature that already existed, a light mode and a dark mode. You know, brand new innovation in Windows hasn't happened for a long time. You know, software innovation. You don't think of Windows when that happens. You think of Apple. Apple likes to try and innovate in software all the time. They're like, you know, we're going to make a cursor, but it's not a normal cursor. It's a circle, and it does all these weird things. You know, they're trying to innovate in spaces. Microsoft just doesn't do that with Windows. And with this conversation we had with Microsoft, and indeed echoing Panos Panay's article from a couple of weeks back, Microsoft wants to push innovation in Windows once again. They're reinvesting resources and effort into the Windows OS. That includes full Windows 10 and Windows 10X. So we're going to see some of that come to life next year as well. They're saying 2021, the 2021 releases. So I think that'll be, what will it be? 2104 and 2109 or something. We should start seeing some interesting changes and stuff with those releases. I don't know if we're going to see any huge new sort of innovations pushed in those updates, but I definitely think we'll see some of the platform stuff, especially the sort of modernizations of Windows 10X, at least in part, come to full Windows 10. They can't, of course, bring everything. Windows 10X is a Windows Core product. You can't turn legacy Windows into Windows Core. That's just not how it works. But you can pick and choose bits and pieces and bring them to legacy Windows 10. And that's what we're going to see next year. And that should hopefully improve the OS as a whole. So that's basically everything they sort of told us in the conversation we had with them. Again, none of this was sort of talked about at build. This was sort of contextual stuff that I at least found super interesting. And I sort of wrote it up in his own article. I didn't see anybody else do that for some reason. But yeah, I think Windows is going to become interesting again very soon. I agree 100%. Windows became boring in the last year. Nothing was going on. Windows 10X was the first sign of interesting life. But then it was announced in October. We got a couple of emulator builds, and then it's gone again. You know, like I would love it. And I said this to Microsoft. I was like, can you start issuing insider builds of 10X to devices and stuff so we can actually run it in our day-to-day lives and see what's going on a week-by-week basis? And they said, you know what, we're looking into it and stuff. Like the idea of being able to allow people outside of Microsoft to install Windows 10X on a Surface Go, for example, it's something they're thinking about. It's not, they didn't outright deny that or confirm it, but they said, yeah, no, we are looking into stuff like that. We're talking to our partners as well. So no ETAs or timeframes for that, but it's definitely something that they know people want. So hopefully we'll see that later this year as well.
Yeah, getting 10X stuff to Windows 10 is going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
I think, this idea of like with Panos, I mean, we've said it numerous times already. He seems to be the right guy for this, right? He kind of gets it. He knows what's sort of interesting, what people want. So I don't know. I'm curious what this actually translates into, but it all seems really neat. And 10X, of course, if we can get it onto current Surface devices, would make a lot of people happy.
Yeah. Some people asking, is 10X the final commercial name? Yes, that's not a code name. Windows 10X is the official shipping name of Windows Lite or Santorini, or the laptop desktop version of Windows Core. Yeah, we've talked about the name before. Some people like it, some people don't. I think it's a cool name. Although I would have preferred if they didn't call it Windows at all, but that's a conversation for an entirely different time. In the meantime, though, let's take a look at some of the announcements that came out of Build regarding Microsoft Edge. Now, I think you had a finger on this, Dan. Anything noteworthy?
For Edge, yeah, so Pinterest, they made a deal with Pinterest, which, I don't really use Pinterest, although I have an account with them. And they always show up when I do Bing image searches. You're trying to find a watch. And but I know Pinterest is very popular as a way for people to basically collect and save images, and and this all overlaps tremendously with collections, which has turned out to be a very popular feature with Edge. And that's why it took them a little while to roll it out to production, but it's out there now. And I use it a lot for shopping and research, and it's just a great way to, instead of favoriting, which doing favorites is just sort of, it's just not a good system for organizing, where this is like a more visually oriented system. So they're doing this partnership with Pinterest, which is going to allow collections and basically things on Pinterest to overlap. And I think that's just genius, because if you already have a Pinterest account, these things will just naturally flow into each other. So that's really cool. And then, of course, there was some big news around PWA, including another project name. What's the name of the project? I got to search for it. Hold on. Oh, Project Fugu, which is kind of funny. So PWA, Progressive Web Apps, if you don't know, it's not something that Microsoft owns. It was actually something that Google was promoting years ago, and Google's still heavily involved with it as part of a web standards approach to creating efficient websites that can be kind of turned into, leveraged as apps, web apps. And, years ago, it wasn't that interesting because everybody just had dedicated apps for things. But the cost of doing dedicated apps, especially if you're for independent stuff, I'm not talking like Bank of America or Netflix. I'm talking, although Netflix has a really good sort of PWA website. But, Microsoft today will tell you 50% of Windows usage is in the browser. That's a lot of usage. This is why Google got into Chrome OS years ago, and this concept of just being in the browser all the time. And if you have 50% of people using the browser, that becomes an interesting sub-platform. This is why Edge is so important to Microsoft, and there's so much investment going into it. And luckily, it's paying off, right? They're seeing a lot of adoption for it. But really, you need to think of Edge as a sub-platform for Microsoft. That's why it's on iOS, it's on Android, it's on Windows. It's going to be on Linux soon as well. It's on Mac OS. Because through it, they can sort of do their own stuff, deliver their own services. When it comes to running Edge on Windows, though, and PWAs, you can already do a lot. So this idea of like right-clicking in a menu and installing any website as an app is super convenient. It's more than just pinning it to your start bar. It runs with its own containerized version. It strips down the toolbar. This is how I run. Even on a Core i9 2080 Ti, I run Twitter, I run Slack, I run a bunch of apps, Google Calendar, all as PWAs. And so PWAs are very powerful, and they can do a lot, but there are limits. Those limits are slowly being addressed by the consortium. Everybody's contributing to this. What Microsoft's doing, though, is like, all right, how can we get PWAs to work even better on Windows 10? So they're building this sort of extra layer that goes around it. And it's completely optional, but this allows PWAs to work better in Windows 10 in terms of tiles, notifications, the little app badges. So if I have Twitter and I get a bunch of notifications, that little circle with the number that you see on your phone, like you can get that through PWA now. You can't really do it right now, but that's what I'm talking about. Those are the technologies that are coming. So they announced you'll be able to set PWAs as default apps for file types, URLs, and protocols, which is super interesting. So this is like something PWAs right now kind of exist as their own kind of sub apps, but this will allow them to be default. You can actually open files with them. Native file system access, the ability to run on OS login. That's super interesting. So if you use something like Slack or even Teams, if you use the apps, you can have the actual apps auto load in Windows when you start up. Some people don't like that behavior, but it's purely optional. PWAs can't do that right now. When your computer boots up, they just will sit in my taskbar unactive. I have to click them and then load them. You'll now be able to set them to auto load, which is kind of cool. Setting PWAs as a share target. So this is another interesting one. There is already the ability to share from within PWA. So if you're using a Twitter PWA from Edge and you hit the little share thing, you will get the native Windows 10 share list, which I love. I use that thing all the time. That's the one that gives you share to nearby PCs, as well as a bunch of other apps, as well as people. So you can already do that from a PWA, but you'll be able to do that, send stuff to one as well, and plus app shortcuts. So they have this like long roadmap and improving the UI and all this kind of stuff. And we've already seen a ton of improvements. Some of this is already in Canary. You can go into the Edge flags and set, actually I forgot what the actual setting is. Let me look it up here. But if you don't know how to do this, go and type into the taskbar Edge, :2 backslashes, and then flags, and then search for web apps. And you'll see one that says Web App Identity Proxy. And if you turn that to enabled and restart your browser, as these features come online, which I don't know, be happening over the summer, you'll start to get those and get those new experiences.
Yeah.
But this is all big stuff. Like, I'm a huge fan of PWAs, and they're just going to keep getting better and feel more and more like native apps. And this helps solve that app problem, right? So I think it's good stuff.
Yeah. As well, with some of the changes they're introducing, web app developers will be able to customize the title bar as well, so they can do what they want up there rather than relying on Edge's own title bar to sort of theme the color. You'll be able to put your own elements in the title bar and stuff, which are kind of nice as well. The biggest thing that I'm excited about...
So just a real clarification there. So developers already on their websites can already specify the color code for that if they want to. And then Edge will default. But what you're saying is users will be able to customize that, right?
I believe, I believe so as well. But I also believe developers will be able to sort of put things in the title bar as well. So instead of so like a sort of Chromeless UI or something along those lines. But the thing I'm most interested in regarding this is the ability for web apps to list themselves as an app in the notification center. Because right now, if you say enable push notifications on Twitter and you receive a Twitter notification, it comes up under Microsoft Edge in the notification area, not Twitter. If Windows is to treat it like its own app, I just bashed the mic, sorry, it should come up as Twitter in the notification center and stuff. And this is what will enable that, which is super exciting for me. Same for in the Task Manager, you'll see it listed as its own app in Task Manager rather than a page under Microsoft Edge. Microsoft really is moving to make PWAs feel at home and like native apps on Windows. And I think, like, for example, like the Slack Windows app, the Electron version of Slack, is kind of crap. The web app is much better, and it would be great if you could sort of just pin Slack, the web app, to your start menu or install it as an app through Microsoft Edge and have it have all the same functionality, the native notifications, ability to run on startup that the Windows app does. But now it runs much better because it's not using the stupid Electron thing that the Windows app uses. That's the future. That's what PWA can do for people, and I'm super excited about it.
And the one I know you really want that they're working on too is notifications. So when they come in, they're not under the banner of Edge.
Yeah, exactly what I said,
Yeah, so all cool stuff. So pay attention to that. There's a lot of stuff that's coming in the next few months, summer and then fall for PWAs and Edge. But really start to think of Edge as a sub-platform for Microsoft. It's a really big deal. And like I said, 50% of users on Windows, especially with the at-home stuff that people have been doing, is in the browser. And that's why it's so important. They did pivot at the right time. It's like there was, when you broke that story, what was that, 2 years ago, about them switching away from Edge, I was like, is this going to work? Especially like, how can they differentiate themselves? But they've been doing some great stuff. Like, I mean, I'm a really big fan of the new Edge, and this idea of they're getting a vertical tab soon,
Yeah.
which is gonna be really kind of bizarre to try out. Like, there's just so much stuff that they're adding to it. I still love reading mode. I think it's one of my favorites. I like to do the share charm. I think is great. Collections, of course, is massive. Making these partnerships with companies like on iOS and Android, you get the NewsGuard support. And you can actually install NewsGuard in Edge on Windows, and it's free. I think it's normally $2.99 a month, but because of a partnership with Microsoft and Edge and the Bing team, it's free for users. And on iOS and Android, it's built in. And same thing with on iOS and Android, they have Honey built in, which I only started using Honey in the last like 6 months. But Honey is pretty awesome. It if you don't know what Honey is, it's a way to save money. When you go to websites, it does the auto coupon thing for you, and it will automatically insert and try a bunch and give you the lowest price. It's you can also track prices and stuff. But they're doing all these kind of cool partnerships, which just make the experience just better. Like I'm hard pressed. Why would I use Google Chrome at this point? I don't see any reason to. Firefox though is still kind of fun. So if you use Firefox, I respect that. Or Brave. Let's give Brave a little shout out. I think Brave has an interesting game plan too, and so these are all nice browsers. But I'm hooked on Edge. So
there are a couple more Edge announcements coming out of Build as well. First of all, they announced a new search in sidebar feature coming soon, which I think is pretty much the replacement for the Ask Cortana feature in the old Edge. If you remember, you could select text on a web page, right-click on it, select Ask Cortana, then a sidebar would fly out with information. This is exactly that, except it's not Cortana branded anymore. So you, again, with the new Edge, you'll soon be able to select some text, right-click, select Search in Sidebar. It will pull out a sidebar with information about the text you just selected.
So useful. Because it allows you to remain focused on what you're doing without opening a new tab.
Right.
It's just like genius.
They're also building in an automatic profile switching feature, which will prompt users to switch to their work profile if they try to open a link requiring work credentials from their personal profile. Which is kind of unique. So if you're using, Microsoft is really pushing Edge for the enterprise. It's the browser for enterprises, as they're sort of saying. And right now, you can actually set up your profile, a personal profile, say your own MSA, and then your work profile, so your Azure Active Sync Directory or whatever profile as well. And you can switch between them whenever you want. And now they're building a feature into Edge that will automatically switch between the profiles depending on the website you're trying to access, which is super cool. And there's all kinds of new sort of platform improvements that they've introduced to the Chromium project, including improved accessibility, inking, scrolling, and localization improvements. And there's also WebView 2.0, which are available for .NET and UWP development. And obviously the progressive web app enhancements that we just talked about a second ago. So yeah, quite a lot happening in the world of Edge for app build. I think they're just pushing right now extension sync in the stable channel.
Yes. Correct.
Which is a big thing because a lot of people are waiting for extensions sync to show up, and it's now rolling out. I believe it's rolling out in waves, though. I think this is the first release that Microsoft are pushing that rollout in waves instead of it all at once. The last two were sort of, it's available now and you check for updates and it was there. This one, I've been checking for updates and it's not there because it's rolling out in waves, and that makes me sad.
Yep. Someone's pointing out Bing also has a rebates program in beta, which I believe I do. Yeah, if you don't, and people make fun of Bing, but I've been using, I know Zach has problems with Bing because of the UK, but at least in the US, Bing is pretty solid. And I use it, get those points. I occasionally use my points to buy video games through the Xbox store. I don't know, it's a cool system, and same with the rebate stuff. It's actually, if you're in the US, I think it's pretty smart. By the way, quick shout out to Dead to Me Season 2 on Netflix. Season 1 was great. Season 2 is also really great. Microsoft has there's some partnership or something going on there, but I meant to do that today. I'll get some screenshots. There's a lot of Surface product placement in that show. It's really funny because like she's always using a Surface Pro in scenes, and in one scene she was looking how to bury a dead or hide a dead body, and she went to Bing and was typing it in. It was actually Bing. I was like, Bing, it's good. It's good for something. Yeah, it's kind of fun. But go check out that show anyway. It's kind of just fun to see. If you're going to be like me, you're going to ruin it with friends and family where, it's a computer, I know. Don't be that guy. Or be that guy, I don't know. It's fine.
Shall we move on to Microsoft 365? There was quite a bit of Microsoft 365 news this week. First of all, let's start off with Microsoft Lists. This is a new sort of app/service that Microsoft is rolling out this summer, which is kind of like Airtable. If you've ever used Airtable, it's a sort of data tracking website. You can put in like items into lists and stuff, and you can assign them to people, and you can add different information into them and stuff. Microsoft describes this as a simple and powerful app to share and track information such as workflow issues, contacts, issues tracking, and status reporting within Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and Outlook. The functionality extends to the new Lists mobile app as well. So Microsoft Lists will be its own app that you can download and install on Android and iOS. Users can use templates to start lists or create their own, configure color formatting, build alerts, and standardized processes with simple if this then that configurations. As part of Microsoft 365, Microsoft Lists comes with built-in governance, security, and compliance capabilities. For makers who need more than the out-of-box offering, Microsoft Lists integrates with Power Apps and Power Automate as well. And it builds on top of more than 20 years of SharePoint list innovation, bringing these capabilities to a broader set of users across Microsoft 365. And it simplifies the user experience for those familiar with SharePoint lists and for new users on any device. So if you're somebody who likes to keep track of lists, Microsoft Lists sounds like a great service for you. A lot of people are like, how is this different from To-Do? It's quite a bit different from To-Do. It's a little bit more granular, and it ties into sort of, it's more for enterprises, really. This isn't really a consumer-based thing. But yeah, this is, I think, was the sort of the most interesting announcement coming out of the Microsoft 365 segments of Build. There is also some Microsoft Teams stuff, as is there always. Let's see what's new here specifically. Lots of new sort of plugins and apps for Microsoft Teams. For example, there's a new booking app which integrates in Teams and enables organizations to schedule, manage, and conduct business-to-consumer meetings from Teams. It was announced in March and is now generally available. There's also Power Platform integration, which promises more powerful apps, bots, flows, and dashboards. And a whole bunch of customizable templates, which are now coming to Microsoft Teams as well, which will help eliminate the work of setting up a new team from scratch, which is pretty fun. Sort of outside of Microsoft Teams, I guess not. I guess it is still technically in Teams as well. NDI support for Skype TX interoperability for Microsoft Teams, so Skype TX, for those who don't know, is a sort of media broadcaster version of Skype. We use the standard consumer version of Skype. Skype TX is designed for TV broadcast, like news and whatever. And now you can have that in Microsoft Teams, and it now also supports NDI support, which is pretty fun. NDI, for those who don't know, is what people use to pull the video from Skype. So I'm using it right now to pull Dan's video into the broadcasting app that I'm using to stream to YouTube and Mixer. Without it, you wouldn't be able to see his face. So you can thank NDI for that. So that's basically the big stuff coming out of the Microsoft 365 stuff. There's also some Fluid updates, Fluid workspaces and Fluid components in preview in Outlook web app and Office.com. Microsoft introduced the first way for end users to experience the Fluid framework in Microsoft 365 with the upcoming availability in preview of Fluid workspaces and Fluid components. These two things work just like the web to bring the right level of context and connection, as well as seamlessly capture follow-ups inline and edit actions items with an entire team. So, this is the kind of similar to what you can do in Word, where you can write at the same time in the same document. They're bringing that to more parts of Office, including Outlook and Office.com as well. The Fluid components will be available for creation in Outlook for the web and Office.com. So that's pretty cool as well. And also Fluid Framework will be made open source with the repository available on GitHub. Lots of open source news coming out of Build. Windows Terminal hits stable release at version 1.0. And that's sort of like Microsoft's modern version of CMD, which has access to not only command prompt, but PowerShell, Windows subsystem for Linux, plus any other sort of command line interface you can install. You can also hook up to Windows Terminal, which is super fun as well. So that's basically it for the Microsoft 365 segment of Build. A lot happening there, as is usually the case. Microsoft 365 is one of Microsoft's biggest businesses right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I zoned out. I fall asleep with Microsoft 365. But yes, it is actually, they're making a lot of useful tools for a lot of people. I'm a huge fan of the new editor plugin, which, because that plugin for Edge, and it actually exists for other browsers too, but we're talking about Edge here. So I use the editor plugin, which is part of that whole Microsoft 365 thing. But because of that, when you combine it with PWAs, it means you can get native spell checking basically in all your apps like Twitter, which is so useful on Twitter. So it allows you to write better tweets without screwing up. And Lord knows there's no edit button on Twitter stuff. But all these little features are just making my life just a little bit more easier and enjoyable. So looking forward to all the stuff coming to Office and everything later this year, but all good stuff. Oh, and quickly, let's round up, I guess, with HoloLens 2. So no, it's still not for consumers. Don't ever ask that. HoloLens 2 will never be for consumers, not this generation. It's still strictly enterprise. And I know that makes people sad, but you really do not want to pay a ton of money for this thing right now. That said, there was a lot of news around it this week in terms of it's doing very well for Microsoft. So the ramp up for, let's bring up the article here. The ramp up for the original HoloLens actually took some time it was like a year before they announced it, before it was actually on sale. And then when it went on sale, it was only in select markets, and then it ramped up. But all this is happening way quicker. They announced it in February. I believe it went on sale. You can actually buy it. I think it was in October. So it was only like 8 months later. And now 6 months after that, it's expanding to 15 new markets. So that's going to bring up the number to 25 markets worldwide. That includes things like Netherlands, Switzerland, Spain, Austria, Sweden, Finland, Norway, Denmark, Belgium, Portugal, Poland, Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. So it goes to show you that there's a lot of demand for this. You can also, starting this summer, you will be able to buy it online from the Microsoft Store or a physical Microsoft Store, should you be lucky enough to have one nearby you. Now, they may even have one on display. It's not for consumers. It's mostly meant for small businesses. But just like how you can buy the Surface Laptop 3 with Intel, and they have them in the back, like you can do the same thing with HoloLens. You can go in, plunk down $3,000, $3,500. They'll bring you out a package and probably sing a party for you because you just spent a lot of money. But you could actually do that, which is kind of neat. But this has to do with the production. They're able to sort of meet demand now, get that stuff out there. They also some things. Azure Spatial Anchors went from preview to general availability. If you don't know what that is, it's a cross-platform system that allows you to map out a room and create basically points in this real world to map it, but it's cross-platform. So it works with iOS, it works with Android and Windows and all these different devices, whether virtual reality, augmented reality. So this gets back to how Microsoft isn't just content with building like the hardware. They're building the entire back end that's going to power augmented reality going forward. And they're already there early, and it's cross-platform, and it works very well. And so I know ASA, Azure Spatial Anchors, is kind of boring and tedious. Just understand, like, this is really important for Microsoft to get into this field and sort of dominate it, just like how Office is sort of like the default standard for productivity, how Azure is for cloud, OneDrive, all this kind of stuff. So that's really good news. There's also, of course, there's another Azure out there. Oh, Azure Remote Rendering. That's actually kind of cool. I think this is sort of similar to Project X Cloud, where you're going to be rendering the game in the cloud and it streams to your device. Well, you can kind of do the same thing with HoloLens, where you can do high-end graphics stuff on Azure's servers and then stream it to your HoloLens because it's still technically running a Snapdragon ARM processor. So this is, again, a way to make these devices even more powerful using today's current hardware. So that's going into a public preview. And when they announced HoloLens 2, as I mentioned, it runs a Snapdragon 850 processor. It's built for Windows devices, but it doesn't have LTE, which to Zach and I were like, that's weird because like it seems like you're halfway there. You already got the chipset. Why would you how cool would it be to walk around with HoloLens on with LTE and just use it anywhere because you'd have a dedicated internet? And they're like, no, our customers weren't asking for that. It wasn't high on their list. They wanted better battery, more comfort, and all these other features. And that's what Microsoft did. Well, I don't want to say I was right, but they are seeing more demand for this kind of technology. So what they've allowed now is you can, since there's a USB Type-C connector on the back, you can now connect up an Ethernet dongle and then wire it to a 5G or 4G, data device. I forgot what those they call it. God, I haven't used them forever. The little bricks, and you can like put that in your pocket and have a wire running down you and run around the world and have 5G connected HoloLens. But it goes to show you, I think that the next version is very likely they're going to make that native because, yeah, this kind of makes sense. But it's kind of cool that they've added support for that. They've also added for Zach dark mode, which is which is by default now, which is kind of nice because dark mode makes sense on HoloLens. And then finally, they highlighted 3 real usage cases. So there's the National Health Services in the UK, which Zach is very familiar with. There's also Case Western Reserve University, which they've been around for a while using HoloLens. They use it for teaching anatomy. And so all these stories, including the Avicenne Hospital in France, they're using, I said France, I said it terribly, France. These are all usage cases for COVID-19 where these institutions have had to adapt to the new work at home and not having students come in. And so these are like some real world usages of HoloLens 2 being out there, how companies are basically benefiting from it. So really neat stuff. For the consumers out there wondering, well, what's Windows mixed reality? Is it dead? Are we going to hear any movement? 2 things I can tell you. Recently, HP teased what we understand to be the new Reverb Generation 2 G2. I reviewed Reverb last year. It's actually one of the best mixed reality headsets. It's very comfortable, very light. So it works. That is a partnership with HP, Microsoft, and Valve. And so that's really interesting. So that was teased in March. Expect to hear more of that soon. So that's going to be something, if you're into that stuff, mixed reality, virtual reality kind of stuff. You're going to want to pay attention to that. It's really neat. I would also expect, although I can't tell you it's definitely true, later this year, possibly in the fall, we'll hear some updates to Windows mixed reality as it is. So no, it's not dead. But Microsoft will be the first to admit virtual reality, its mixed reality platform, it's not just them. As a whole, virtual reality still hasn't broken into the mainstream, whether it's Oculus or whatever else out there. You know this. There's that Facebook one, right? Is Facebook Oculus?
Yeah, it's Oculus.
And then there's Valve. Yeah. So like all this stuff is still niche and prosumer and early adopter. It's gotten better, but who's using this stuff? Even I don't get to use this stuff very often. So Microsoft's very much aware of that. That said, they're still investing into it, until that technology gets better. But there is hope for you if you're really into this stuff. There will be some news for you soon. So, but HoloLens 3 and the consumer version, I think we're still a few years out. But related to that, I want to point out there was that big rumor this week with Apple that they're going to tease their virtual, or I should say augmented reality glasses sometime in the fall. That there's this like, they're going to do this one more thing moment, which they haven't actually done a one more thing since I think the original one more thing. But for some reason, every time Apple does an event, there's always going to be like, they're going to do a one more thing and it's going to blow everybody away. And they never do. But apparently this year they are. According to this rumor, I forgot, who was it? Prosner? Yeah, I've got the Apple leaker.
No idea.
Yeah. But he's been pretty reliable on these leaks. And he says they're going to show off their Apple augmented reality glasses. They're not going to be available, though, till almost a year later, maybe even 2022. So don't get your hopes up too much, which I think makes way more sense because of the technology and what it takes to get there. If that's the case, I would still expect Microsoft might have something similar too by 2022 as well. I don't know. There's a lot of movement in this space. I think we're all waiting for that eureka moment where we do just put on glasses and you get the best of both worlds. And supposedly Apple's version, it makes sense. It's only going to be $500, which seems way cheap, but it's only because they're just glasses with a projector and no camera on the front. So it's just that. And they're powered by your iPhone, which would be in your pocket and streams to it. And to me, that's actually really smart and genius and could keep the cost down. And basically, it's like an Apple Watch. And I could see that actually happening. I mean, there's the Focus 2, which are about to come out. The Canadian company makes something similar as well. I don't know. We'll see what's happening, but this space is very exciting, but it's still premature. So we'll see, and hopefully Microsoft, fingers crossed, is already thinking about doing this stuff. They, Lord knows they have enough of this technology invested already that they could theoretically create something interesting, but it's just a matter of the hard work can get there. Microsoft doesn't have that ability though, right? To have like, could Surface Duo do that? I don't know. But this idea, like Apple is in a really good position where they have the phone as its main computer and you have a watch and the glasses. They kind of have that whole ecosystem. Plus, you toss on earbuds. You could be like a walking virtual reality machine, right? That's what everybody's been talking about going to happen. But Apple could actually have that controlled, tightly integrated system to actually pull it off. I'm not sure how Microsoft does that without a phone. And this gets back to the whole reason why phone was so important. But I digress, and we're way long in this podcast, exactly 90 minutes. So let's wrap it up. We're going to do Q&A as usual. So start firing off your questions now about stuff we talked about or stuff we didn't talk about. If you're listening to this recorded, you don't get to hear that. Sorry about that. You can listen to us every Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, mixer.com/Windows Central, or on our YouTube channel, also at Windows Central. You can follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, as well as my Instagram, and follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN as well. We always appreciate your comments and you guys listening in, and stay safe out there. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everybody.
Excellent.
Ooh, I need a...
Will Microsoft Lists be coming to the consumer version of Microsoft 365? I don't know. I think it might be an option, but I don't know. Where are your Surface earbuds, Zach? They're right here.
Well, you should just tape a white disc to your wired ones, and it'll fool most people, I think.
What are your thoughts on Microsoft recruiting for the Duo team? Could Duo still be a while off, or are they getting ready for Duo 2? Microsoft, it's not a surprise that Microsoft is still recruiting for the Duo team. There's always room for more people to help. I think whoever they're recruiting now are going to be working on the post-launch stuff rather than the pre-launch stuff. I'm pretty sure early June is the cutoff date for pre-launch stuff. Because they need to start, getting the factory images ready and stuff. Whoever they're hiring, they'll be working on the sort of post-launch Duo software updates and stuff, plus Duo 2. They're definitely planning Duo 2 stuff.
Are you guys more excited about Project Reunion or Project Fugu? Why do I have to pick? Project Reunion, it's hard for me to conceptualize and envision exactly what that's going to do for me outside of just having nice apps. But I always kind of want nice apps, so I don't know. So I'm going to have to go with Fugu because I'm a huge fan of PWAs. I really think, I use them. And for the record, my still favorite Surface, despite all the new ones out there, is still Surface Pro X. And PWAs are just awesome on that device. And so I'm a little bit more excited about that. I rely on PWAs every day now for all my core services. So any way that they get better, I'm all here for it.
Will Microsoft develop a version of Edge to run natively on Windows 10 X, or will they simply run the current version in the Win32 container? So Microsoft Edge on Windows 10 X is the Win32 app, but it's not exactly the same. So Microsoft Edge on Windows 10 X operates via a shim, which essentially translates the Win32 API so that it talks natively to Windows 10 X. I think Edge and Office are the only two apps that can do that. So when you launch Microsoft Edge, the Win32 program on Windows 10 X, it's actually running natively without the legacy container because it's operating via a shim. But I do not think third-party developers have access to that capability. I think it's only for system Microsoft first-party apps. Sorry. Can you talk more about the predicted timeline for replacing Classic Edge with Edge Chromium as the backend browser for Windows 10, like in the store, PWAs, background processes, etc.? Microsoft hasn't said that there's any plan to do that. They are doing WebView 2, which allows developers to package the new Chromium WebView in their own app, but Microsoft isn't planning to replace any of the Edge HTML WebViews inside the operating system because they're worried it will break compatibility with apps that haven't updated or have been built specifically for Edge HTML. So yeah, I assume this will eventually happen way down the road, but there's no current plan to do it. there's no timeline or specific date they have where they plan to replace all of the Edge HTML stuff with the Chromium stuff.
Just like how IE has stuck around for,
yeah, exactly.
some would argue, a little bit too long, but still technically there.
We're at the 22nd of May. Any idea when the 20H1 May update will actually come? The rumor is it will start rolling out on the 28th of May. That's not confirmed, but that is the internal rumor, or in the internal date. Perhaps that will be what launches as well. Is Andromeda dead? Yes. With Windows, excuse me, wow. With Windows soon running Linux apps, do you think Android apps might be next? It's a good question. I don't think for consumers, no, because the Linux GUI stuff isn't for consumers either. It's for developers. Perhaps maybe you'll be able to build an app on an Android app and run it natively on your PC if you really want to. But again, this won't be a consumer feature. This is strictly an enterprise/developer thing, run using the command line in Windows Terminal. Your grandmother isn't going to be doing this on a Windows PC. Thoughts on Windows Package Manager and WinGet? We have already talked about this on the podcast. If you skip back to around the beginning-ish, maybe 15 minutes in, we start talking about it. Have you heard anything on the or the other dual screen devices? How much of a delay should we expect? The answer is I don't even think Microsoft knows how much of a delay to expect. I wouldn't expect to see Surface Neo until the end of next year at the earliest. Do you think
virtual build went well? Yes.
I do too.
It was very, very successful. They had a lot of attendees, way more than the physical events. And by all, CNN ran a story talking about how successful it was and how well the production of it and the quality and how fun it was. And you have to give Microsoft a lot of credit here for the short turnaround to go from a huge physical event to a virtual one and still make it entertaining, nerdy, and informative for a lot of people. So I think it's going to be the way going forward. I'd be shocked if they bring back physical build. This was probably way cheaper, and they hit way more developers, and developers seem to really enjoy the sessions, being able to watch things on demand and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's I think Microsoft did a very, very good job with build.
Yeah, and the actual keynotes, the presentations they did were really funny. Like Scott Hanselman's whole thing was, I thought it was hilarious. He did a whole, he was using Teams. He was basically sort of showing off Teams and its versatility and stuff, switching between devices, talking to different people. This is this dumb bit he does where he's sort of showing off the Microsoft Teams, virtual background thing, and he's sitting there like, I'm about to go and have a break, and then he just sort of pulls away, and as he pulls away, it reveals a picture of him standing still. I just thought it was such a tiny moment, but I thought it was so funny. And then another thing he did was he got Panos Panay on, which everybody's interested to hear what Panos Panay has to say. And they have him on for about 3 minutes, and they cut him off basically because he gets really invested in what he's talking about. Like he's about to start talking about the Service Book 3 and Windows 10 and the future of Windows 10. And he pulls up a notepad, Scott Haslam, and he's like, "This guy's going to go on for quite a while. I'm going to have to leave you here for now. See you later." And then the sort of fades to black. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah, and as people pointed out, the hosts were really good. Yeah, Donna Sakar, who of course was there and being her diva self, but she did an outstanding job. She was funny, entertaining, and Christina Warren did a great job. But all the hosts were this is the fun part about Microsoft. They have like really smart people who are also get pop culture and also know how to make nerdy jokes and be humorous. And it was a good combination of all of that without being too corny, too nerdy, but also sticking to its audience. So that was great.
Is the Duo,
Seth Morris. That's good.
Is the Duo still on track for a fall release? I continue to be told that Surface Duo will be launched this year. That is something Microsoft's definitely doing.
I can't hear you, Zach.
Oh, really?
No, it's me.
Oh, okay.
It's just it's cycled.
When will you see the Windows 10 21H build start rolling out after the public release of 20H1? I expect to start seeing 21H1 builds in the next few weeks.
All right. So Mark asks, thoughts on the name for Windows 10X? It's definitely important to relate it to the Windows Microsoft brand, but the Win32 container tech isn't foolproof. There'll be use cases that may not work. Can imagine people going, why isn't this running XYZ? I'm not aware of any use cases of Win32 not working. It hasn't been demonstrated yet. And Microsoft says there really shouldn't be any issues running any software. So I don't understand the confusion. Not to mention, I think the original, when 10X launches, it's going to be geared mostly schools and education and current Chromebook markets, as well as general consumer devices, not enterprise or people who need to do really advanced work. So I don't see this as an issue at all. I mean, even as a consumer, you can buy this device, run 10X, and it's going to install all your apps. Like, what more do you want, right? It's going to have an easier time than ARM will, but even ARM is getting there. We have seen movement with ARM 64 support for x64 apps. So that's still a thing.
There will be some apps that don't work, but only because Microsoft has put a limitation in. For example, the antivirus stuff.
That
won't work.
Right.
Also, any program that tries to customize the Windows shell or try to modify system files also won't work. You won't be able to use programs that partition hard drives. That kind of thing won't work. But for the most part, everything else should work fine. The only issue you might come across is if an app tries to minimize the system tray and stuff, it won't be able to do that. And also, and this might just be a problem with the development builds, but when you minimize a Win32 program, it eventually puts the container to sleep, which means you stop getting notifications from the likes of Teams.
And even that, they said they're open to the idea of either giving users the options. Yeah, so there's still movement there, but I mean, sorry, you can't install McAfee on your brand new Windows 10X microcomputer, or Norton antivirus, or you can't run Windows blinds to redo this new operating system that's not compatible with that app at all. So I find these are going to be real edge cases, but if you're just like a regular person buying a computer, I think you'll be totally fine with this.
Did they mention anything at Build about Windows 10 Touch experience? It's really bad and it's confusing, especially with the focus on Surface Go and Surface Pro X. You're right, and no, they didn't. Microsoft didn't talk about any user experience changes coming to Windows at Build.
There was a thing about Touch has to be consensual. So.
Well, I'm glad they admitted it. I mean, look. I think if you take a look at Windows 10X, that's where Microsoft's head is at when it comes to touch experiences on Windows. I don't know how they're going to deliver that to the full version of Windows, but I'm sure they have plans. Panos Panay's in charge now. He's already been showing off ideas for UI and stuff on the full version of Windows. I would be shocked if he's also not considering updates to the touch UI on Windows 10 as well. They'll need to do something about game launches on Steam, even if it's just for casual light gaming. I don't think you'll be playing even light games on Windows 10X. If it's a Win32 program, definitely not. Windows 10X isn't for that. It's just not. It's like, I can't think of anything to compare it to.
I don't know if that wouldn't run. I mean, I run Steam on the Surface Pro X.
Yeah, but
I mean, I know there's containerized things, but
yeah, I think the containerization adds an additional layer of latency and stuff. I could be wrong about that, but I've tried to run Steam on Windows 10X in the development builds, and it's just not happening. It is not happening. The games launch, but they don't display anything. Again, it could be a bug, but at the same time, it might be because you're technically remote desktoping into the container to see the program to begin with, and that's going to just cause lots of issues with trying to stream an actual video game. So we'll have to see, but I do not expect people will be gaming too much on Windows 10X. Maybe through game streaming, of course, will be fine. You'll be able to use the Xbox game streaming app and stream whatever you want. But native games running on Win32, I don't think you're going to get much luck out of those. Unless the UWP. Yeah. Satya Nadella pronounces as Satya or Satya? I don't know. I think it's Satya. I say Satya.
Same.
Will Microsoft ever release a new Wi-Fi driver that fixes Surface Pro 7 Wi-Fi issues? It's the only negative point about my Surface Pro 7. I was unaware of any Wi-Fi issues on the Surface Pro 7. Is this a known thing, Dan, or do you not know anything either?
I haven't been following. I mean, I haven't really had any issues. I think there is some quirkiness with the Intel Wi-Fi's where sometimes when you resume from sleep, it doesn't automatically reconnect. And I think these are just some bugs that they're working on with the AX201s and AX200 chipsets. It's better than Marvel. That's all I'll say about that. But the Surface Pro X just got a Wi-Fi driver update. Oh, that's not using Intel. So I mean, they're working on it, but I haven't heard a lot of people complain about it. So
possible launch ton of first-party Windows. Ton of first Windows 10X OEM devices. I guess this question is asking: will there be the possibility of Windows 10X devices from OEMs at launch? Yes, and if anything, I think OEMs will be first. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I think it's just like how they did Surface RT. I mean, or Windows RT back in the day, or Windows 10 when that came out, or Windows 10 on ARM. Every time they do one of these, their partners are involved. We were going to see it with Windows 10X. Lenovo was already there with its foldable device, ready to almost launch. I don't know the status of that. And then Dell came out with a version they were working on. But yeah, you'll definitely see and even Windows Mixed Reality was like this too, where a bunch of OEMs came in with their own takes on it. So yeah, I would say Windows 10X very much expect to see a wide-ranging launch of different types of devices. As I said on the podcast, I think some will be super cheap Chromebook competitors, and I wouldn't be surprised if one or two come out with some sort of more high-end sort of premium experiences as well, and kind of really and Microsoft would want that. They want their partners to sort of hit all those use cases out there. Although Microsoft probably have some kind of Surface thing too. So
I think I'm going to order a pizza tonight.
Nice.
Domino's.
I'm going to have to do that too. Pizza, some beer, and Top Gun in 4K HDR. It's a good time. Wait, I got to show you something, Zach. I know you kind of don't care, but and I had to put this on Instagram. I got to write a story, though, explaining it. It's a new watch. I got two new watches. I have this one.
Here we go again.
Which is a classic. This is a classic World War II watch. But this one is amazing.
What is
this
that?
This is the Boulevard Computron. It's a remake of a watch that came out in, I believe, 1978. And I'll explain why it's designed like this. But if you're wondering where the watch is, ready? You hit the little button on the side. Do you see it?
Epic.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So the reason why it does that and it's shaped like this is because for a couple of years when digital first came out, they weren't persistent. There were no LCDs like they came out with the Casios in the 80s. So you had to hit a button so the screen would turn on. And it was a big deal. The problem was when you would wear it, if you were driving, you would have to reach over to hit the button, but then you need to rotate to see the time. So it was dangerous. So they made it so the screen is like at an angle. So you'd only have to reach over and hit the button, but then you can keep your hand on the wheel and still see the time. This is a great, amazing hardware solution to a problem that just like 4 years later was completely solved and never had to do. But I just think it's absolutely amazing. So they remade this watch as a tribute, and it's all modern now. And it should have raise to wake, but it doesn't. And a lot of purists are like, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to hit the button. I think it's hilarious. So it's amazing.
That's
it's so
pretty
comfortable
cool.
too.
How much did you pay for that one?
I got a good deal on it. I think I got it for $160 or something like that.
That's a lot.
It's a piece of history. It's amazing. I love wearing it. It's so cool.
What's with Dan and his watches? It's his new.
Ah.
Some people collect stamps, some people collect watches. This is how it goes.
Yeah, this is what quarantine has done to me. I can't. This is what I am now. It's bad. It's really, really bad. I think I have like 10 watches now.
You don't have 10 arms,
and I
Dan.
love everyone. Dude, I switch sometimes 2 or 3 times a day.
That's ridiculous.
I'll just put on
You're not going anywhere.
I know, but I just love looking at them. They're so rad. Not $1.60. It's a Boulevard. It's all metal. It's solid. It's got a nice weight to it. It's some premium stuff right here, people. Someone's collecting old DOS games. That's probably cheaper. It's a cheaper hobby. Hey, at least they don't collect cars. That's an expensive hobby.
Collecting prototypes is an incredibly expensive hobby as well. I know that because I collect them.
Yes. But luckily you haven't had to buy too many of them.
No, yeah.
Recently.
No, they're all gone. Surface Mini was the last one I bought, I think.
And someone's saying we're all just in our 30s and 40s and want to go back to stuff from our childhood. Yep. That's why I have that Casio G-Shock. I think it's wild. Man, the G-Shock, square G-Shock crowd is hardcore. There are a lot of people like the square digital watches. And those are still sell like crazy. It's funny. It's a strange world to get into, but whatever.
Pizza's on the way, which means we'll have to wrap this up soon.
Lucky you. Do they do contactless delivery?
Yes, they do. They just drop it on the floor, basically.
And I love that. I want to stay like that forever. But last week I ordered pizza and I opened the door and he's like wanted me to sign a receipt. I'm like, ew.
Ew, human, get away from me.
This isn't what I was. In the Domino's app, it said it's contactless. Like, what are you doing? But he was like a nice older gentleman, so I was just like, okay, I'll sign for it. I already gave him the tip. Gave him a nice 20% tip. That was disappointing. Like, don't look at my eyes. Don't make face contact with me. Just put the pizza down and walk away.
Will Microsoft ever make a true tablet with 10X? I think if Microsoft are doing a Surface Go 3 with 10X, that would be the true tablet. That can also be a laptop. Wish Microsoft would get back into wearables. Their ban was really good. I agree. I would love to see Microsoft return to the health and sort of, wearable market. I thought the ban was great. I loved it very much. And I feel like Microsoft were sort of ahead of the game in some aspects when it came to the ban. And I just think it's a shame they didn't pursue it further.
The design was, especially Band 2, when it got to that curved display. I mean, the interaction model on that was just awesome. I loved how you can wear with the screen up or down, because I always wore it down, right, when it was facing you. And functionally, that was just so much cooler I was a huge fan of the Band. I would love to see them get back into wearables somehow, but I don't know.
Surface Watch has to happen. Because
it has.
You can absolutely advance PowerPoint slides on a Surface Watch. Do it next.
It makes more sense. It makes more sense in the earbuds.
So right,
yeah. It's cool you can do it on the earbuds, but this is just not. I don't know. I could just imagine having a watch. With a little screen. Way better for that kind of thing.
The swiping to advanced PowerPoint slides makes no sense when a clicker does that, and you hold it in your hand, and you don't have to you raise your hand to do it. You just sort of walk around the stage and press next, and it's fine.
Getting back into that's again, going back to the Computron, which is such a great name. In 1978, they were like, we're going to make a little computer on your wristwatch, because everybody's been trying to do that forever. And I would say, the Apple Watch, I keep praising it. The Apple Watch, I still think is absolutely one of the most interesting, amazing pieces of technology created in the last few years. It only got good with 4 or 5, but it's just what Apple's done with that hardware and that processor and that display is a whole other level. But I'd like to see Microsoft get into that, because right now, to be honest, Google's kind of flubbing it, right? The Google Wear stuff is. There's a good interview with the head of Google this week, and talk about basically their hardware program at Google is kind of where Microsoft's was in 2014, in my opinion. They're making a lot of errors. That Pixel is not selling well. Now there's talk that they were going to do a 4A2 version. Now it's just a 4A1 version, and Google. It goes to show you what the problems Microsoft faced in hardware, including the bands, is not like a cakewalk, and Google is proving that. And Google has, in my opinion, like, I don't know, they seem like they had more of their act together with this stuff, but the whole Wear thing is just flopping. Like, those are just not great watches. And Apple's just running away with that whole field right now. So, well, we'll see. We'll see.
With the change of Windows 10X, any possibility of a Surface Uno? That's funny. That's funny. Microsoft called Windows 10 its last version. Should we say 10X is one last ride? It's funny. Like, had Microsoft never said Windows 10 was the last version of Windows, or pushed the whole one operating system for everything idea, Windows 10X would absolutely just be called Windows X. There's no doubt about it. The fact that they call it Windows 10X is because they committed to this idea that 10 is the last version. So every new version of Windows has to be some version of Windows 10. But
what's crazy about what's crazy about the wearable stuff is how much Pebble is such a legend in that wearable field. Like, people, have you heard about Rebel? Pebble is discontinued, and the hardware doesn't support anymore, and neither is the software. But it's called like Rebel, and it's a user community, and they 3D print hardware and fix things, and they also maintain the software, and it's like they refuse to let it die. And to me it's bizarre. But Pebble was like, I had a Pebble, it was all right. But these people love that stuff. But does the Apple Watch make money? Yeah, actually, if you look at Apple's financials, the watch has actually been one of the areas where they're seeing a lot of growth in and doing quite well. I think Apple Watch has been successful for them. If you think about it, it's Apple Watch or really Fitbit, right? That's really the two big ones. Yeah. And everybody else is trying to find a space in there. And those things are very different, I would argue. But no, Apple's doing well with that watch. And that watch is just going to get better. Other than, again, Samsung, they have that Galaxy Active 2. Zach and I both have one, both like it. And that just got, or it's about to get, support for blood pressure reading, which is insane. And we went just from reading blood oxygen level, which was a pretty big deal, beyond registering your pulse, and now it can do, and heart rate, but now it's going to be doing your blood pressure. That is bonkers. So,
do you think Windows 10X will be the new Windows 10 Home, replace it? I think eventually it will. I don't think it will at first, but I definitely think the idea is to have Windows 10X replace the consumer version of Windows 10, which is, for all intents and purposes, Windows 10 Home. Windows 10 Pro will stick around for the enterprises and gamers and developers, people who need native Win32 legacy API access and stuff. Gaming and all of that good stuff. That's what Windows 10 Pro will be for. Windows 10 Home will sort of become Windows 10X, and I think that makes sense.
And if they can start to make regular desktop Windows look a little bit more like 10X, it becomes an easier sell. Because that'll take a couple of years though. To make that conversion. But once you do it, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they can't do that all at once on Windows 10 because that's a huge UI shift, and as we all know, customers hate huge UI shifts. They have to do it bit by bit by bit by bit. Do you know anything about desktop mode in the Surface Duo similar to Samsung DeX? I do not. I've asked around about this. No one seems to have an answer for me. So I would guess no, but maybe it's just a really well-kept secret.
Yeah, I mean, every time I've even talked to Microsoft, I've asked Microsoft, they flat out said no, it doesn't do anything like that. It has the ability to output, I think, from a display out perspective, but there's no transformative continuum-like experience.
I'm pretty sure that objective will never be reached. Windows 10X simply isn't good enough to replace Home. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So coming from someone who hasn't used 10X on a device and even if you've used it in the emulator, it's not even a 1.0 release thing. And it's just crazy. I mean, people also go nuts over how Surface devices only ship with Windows 10 Home and not Pro. Then you ask them, okay, what's so important about Pro that you need? And they can't even articulate the differences between the two SKUs. So I find this all stuff a little bit crazy. But I mean, there's no doubt that 10X as a 1.0 won't be as powerful as Windows 10 Home. I mean, no one's claiming that. Give it a couple of years, though.
Here's the thing, though.
Can't that happen?
98% of people who use Windows 10 Home don't use anything more than what Windows 10X can provide anyway, so it's fine.
It's true. 50%'s browser. Hey, apparently if it just has a web browser, you already got 50% of what people are using on PC.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, I mean, you already got 50% of the problem solved. Then you just got to get what? Apparently, according to The Verge, it just needs to run Photoshop. So you can do your 4K YouTube videos that everybody's apparently doing. And for your Adobes.
Right, a couple more questions, then I'm going to have to head off.
Yeah, Pete's on the way.
I do. What watch is Zach wearing? I'm not currently wearing it because it was charging, but I do still wear the Galaxy Watch Active 2. I love this thing. I think it's the best smartwatch. Outside of the Apple Watch, of course. If you don't own an iPhone, it's the best smartwatch.
Yes. I concur. Yeah, the Active 2 is a really, really nice design.
Yeah.
And now you got that Facer app, which is super popular. Have you tried Facer?
I have not, no.
Oh, geez. Oh, I'm going to blow your mind. So if you have an Active 2 watch, go to the Android store on the phone, download an app called Facer, Facer, and it'll install to the watch. It's like Galaxy, they already have a lot of watch faces, like a lot for the Active 2. Facer is like a Pandora's box of watch faces. There are so many. You're going to spend the weekend and you can sample all of them. Almost all of them cost money. There's some free ones, but you can trial them all. So you just hold down the button and it'll send it to your device and you can actually see it. There are so many watch faces. It's some really cool ones, but it's a bad thing too, because you're going to just sit on your couch like me watching TV and you just be there for an hour like, no, maybe, no. And it's just going to be, and then you'll never be happy with it. That's one reason why I went back to regular watches, because I don't have to have that problem. But it's a really amazing system. Like Fisher likes it a lot, Mr. Mobile. I need to try a Garmin Fenix 6. I do not. I'm not a really fan of the Garmin system.
I do not.
Watches. Listen, and it's not disparaging Garmin. I know there's a lot of runners out there and people swear by Garmin. And listen, have at it. Like, I'm not going to try to dissuade you that it's not. I'm just saying, for me, I've never been impressed with their designs. I hate their displays, which are always dull and not bright. So, like, a Galaxy Active Watch 2 display is a really nice display. Not quite as good as Apple's, but it's up there. But every time I see the Garmin stuff, it's always washed out and not bright. I don't like their app. It's overkill for what I need it for. I'm into fitness, but I'm not a slave to, like, my heart rate zones. I'm not like that. So it's like, it doesn't do what I need to do. I'm actually rocking. I bought the Charge 4, which was hilarious because I got away from Fitbit. But I wear the Charge 4 and a regular watch now, and I am very happy with this setup I have. It's all I need.
All right, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we're going live and all of that good stuff. But until then, we'll see you next time.
Bye.